Do you have students that love to procrastinate? Me too. These are the students that have the dubious superpower of never really mastering their song in time, no matter how early you start the process. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 10 last-minute ideas to help your student master their recital song before the big day. Now, to clarify, by last minute, I'm talking 2 weeks minimum, maybe even 3 weeks, before your studio recital. You can use these ideas in less time before your recital than that, but I wouldn't necessarily count on them being as effective. And that's because cramming rarely works when it comes to these situations. By having a cutoff a few weeks before your studio recital, it gives your students enough time that they can kind of work out all the kinks, or as we call it, the whack-a-mole time of learning a song. You know that point where you've learned the song, but little problems keep popping up? Yeah, that. If we haven't met, I'm Rosemarie. I'm an online piano teacher, composer, and owner of The Unfinished Lesson. When it comes to procrastination, I have seen it all, whether it's in the classroom, my studio, or even my personal life. I eventually reached a point where I just got tired of other people's emergencies becoming my emergencies. And that's where these ideas came into play. Be sure to watch to the end. I'll be sharing some resources that will help you aid your students in mastering their recital pieces. This will help them avoid that cringe-worthy performance that if they aren't learning it in time, it's probably going to happen. Idea 1, simplify. Now, there's lots of ways to simplify, but I'm going to say let's use the KISS principle here. The simplest solution equals the one that is most likely to be used. Now, this applies to both your student and you. For your student, if they're not great practicers, they're probably not going to be during the recital prep. So we got to keep that in mind. But also, you have enough on your plate. You don't need a complex solution either. It could be something as simple as in a life lived, there are harmonic octaves. Instead of playing you could do them as melodic octaves, which if a student has a smaller hand like mine, they might find it easier to just be able to go between them. So you're dropping a note. In a song like this, you can get away with it. You didn't get to hear the rest of it. No worries, you can check the description and hear the whole song. If it doesn't really take away from the overall mood or feel of the song, just drop the note. It's the easiest solution, and that's the one you should always go with. There are a few other options. So if a student is really struggling with chords, then you could drop it to chord bridges. If they're just starting chord bridges and that's just, for whatever reason, not going great in a section, drop it down to the tonic note. You can take out a section. So something like Super Mario Brothers, there's a lot of repeating parts to it. Or any pop song, you can remove sections. Chances are your audience just isn't going to even notice, or if they do, it's not going to be a big deal. Make sure that you're doing this during lesson time, and it's a chance for you and your student to kind of pretend you're a composer or arranger. Again, what can you take out and still have the essence of the song? And by the way, when I'm composing, I do this all the time because sometimes I'm writing a song and I suddenly realize I'm writing it at a harder level than what for the student that I was writing it for or for the level I was writing it for. And I kind of have to figure out how to simplify it a bit, but not losing the feel of it. Idea 2, link it to previous learning. Patterns and concepts, they're cyclical when it comes to the different levels of piano music or really any instrumental music. We can use this to our advantage. Earlier levels tend to have similar motives, rhythm patterns, skips, steps, that kind of thing. Pointing those out and showing your student, hey, you've already done something that's similar to this can help that learning process and get them over that hurdle. Sometimes this learning, it's going to take a little bit of extra practice. So in something like, say, Jake Meets the Jackrabbit, we can point out that we're used to these chord bridges, right? But students probably are used to them being on beat 1 and 3. they're not in this song. They're on beats 2 and 4. So what you could do is have the student, if they know the song well enough, you could get them to play it on beats 1 and 3, that left hand, and then on the off beat. So it sounds a little different. Here's what they would normally be used to. And this is how it's written. And so this is how you would kind of tie in the previous learning and then get them to kind of build on that. I would recommend with something like this that you focus in on maybe doing it away from the music or kind of covering up part of it, because they're going to be reading it differently than what's written. They might just need a little extra help. But it is a way to make that connection and to really strengthen the learning. Another option could be something with chord progression. Maybe the chord progressions are exactly the same. It's in the same key that they've already played in. Or maybe for more advanced levels, you could look at the Roman numerals so that it doesn't matter what key it's in, but you can analyze, hey, you've already played songs in this chord progression. How are they the same and how are they different in this song? And so just making that link just helps strengthen the neural connections. Idea number 3, divide it into manageable goals. Some students are very visually oriented. And so having a timeline of when they're going to learn particular things within their recital piece and having that on their practice page that they see it all the time is a really great strategy. I've done this with some of my students that they're really goal-oriented, and it keeps them on track during the week, that they know I don't have to learn everything, but I really need to focus in on this one area. Something like, say, Waltz Under the Stars, there's this fantastic accompaniment pattern, but it's a modified pop arpeggio. And sometimes students, they get it, but they kind of don't get it. It's that sort of, but I kind of don't really know it. You know what I'm talking about. In this instance, as much fun as it is for the student to play it hands together, maybe the goal could be the first half of the week, they're only going to do the accompaniment pattern, and then the second half of the week, they're going to play it hands together. The right hand, they'll probably pick it up fairly easily, at least at the beginning there, and so it's a great way to speed up their learning. Now, if you have a student that isn't going to remember midweek to switch over, and I would say that's actually probably a good chunk of your students, then usually I do a ratio where I say, okay, you need to play the accompaniment pattern 3 times on its own, and then you get to play it hands together once. It gets that extra practice in, and there's other strategies you can use that I've talked about in other videos, and it just gives them the practice strategies that they need, and by having it listed out, they know what's coming next. Idea number 4, demonstrate. I have a feeling that you are already demonstrating things and you're demonstrating how to practice during lesson time. However, what we're talking about here is that you consciously decide that practice time and lesson time are the same thing. This is especially important for younger students and then for students that are older but they're really busy. For younger students, having a good amount of lesson, like the majority of lesson being practice time where you're going through those strategies and you're doing them in lesson. This is really important for younger students because the parents who are supporting them during the week, they need to see those strategies in action. Otherwise, they can't support their child during the week. And if you want them involved in practice time, then you need to make sure that they see it and they know it and they feel comfortable. For older students, so I've had students, I find usually by the time they hit about senior high, trying to find practice time is really difficult for them. They probably, they've got their schoolwork, they might have a part-time job, they might be volunteering, and who knows what all else they have going on, what other extracurricular activities. Usually in these situations, I say, look, during recital prep, every time you walk past the piano, just play something. Even if it's for 30 seconds to a minute, just work on this tiny little thing. Then we use lesson time as the practice time so that they're making more of their progress there. And then those tiny little practice sessions are really just to maintain what we've done in lesson. I'm going to link to a video that I've already done that has a bunch of fun activities that you can do with your students during the lesson time. And it'll just help them be able to master the song and make the most out of those very small practice sessions. Idea 5, tutorial videos. Now, there are plenty of videos online on YouTube that you can send your students to for songs. The other option is you could create your own. Now, I know you might be thinking, but that sounds like a lot of work. Again, we want to keep things simple, whether we're using idea 1 or any of these ideas. I would do this during lesson time. If you travel teach or you teach in person, then you want to do an overhead view. My students used to grab a chair, because I would travel teach at their house. They would grab a chair, put it behind the piano bench, and then stand over me with their iPad or their phone recording from over top. That worked great. If they're coming to you, then again, it might be somebody needs to stand on a chair, or you could have an overhead camera, just like what I have. Now, my overhead camera, I've set it up so that when my student sees it, not only do they see me play on the bottom of the screen, but they see light up keys at the top of the screen. This works out really great. It makes it easier for students to see more of the keyboard, but also be able to see what notes I'm playing. So what about something like Rabbit in the Garden? Well, the Rabbit in the Garden, it's an elementary piece. At this level, a lot of times the music, each line is its own phrase or its own section. You could do a video that has the whole song. I typically will do a video for each section. It just makes it easier for a student and the parent that they're not feeling overwhelmed. For longer songs, you can choose how you want to do this. But what I would do is play, for example, the first line. And then I would play it again slowly, very slowly, so that if they need help with the notes, they can see them on that overhead view, the light up keys. I won't do that because the video will get too long. And then I would give some teaching points at the end of the video, things that they might trip up on or that they might need reminders on. I do not use a student's name with these videos. That way I can put them as unlisted videos. We want to respect copyright. My students know they cannot share them. They can go and look at those. If you choose to go the unlisted YouTube route, there's a few advantages. One, you're not trying to store all of this in online storage and you're not trying to send them all to students. If you have a program that allows you to upload files for students, that's great. What I've done is created docs for each song. In that doc, it has a reminder that they can't share the videos, and also then links for each section so that the student, I'm just giving them the doc. It's in their online storage. They can access it whenever they need to, and they can access those videos in the order that they need to. Idea number 6, communicate. We should be doing this all year, but especially before a recital, this is really important. It's so incredibly important to keep parents in the loop of what resources you have available for their student during the week. Now, your older teens, you don't need to necessarily do this, but I would say even junior high, especially if you know your student will forget to look at that tutorial video that you made for them, then just let the parent know. There's a couple ways to do this that don't take much time. One, you can just spend a couple seconds at the end of lesson. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that so-and-so has this tutorial video, and if they get stuck, that's where they should look first. The other option is you can just send them a text or an email. Again, keep it very short and simple. You're just letting them know the resources there. This is going to save them frustration, because I know as a parent, I get frustrated when I can't help my child, but there's also no resources for me to help them. And as the teacher, I get frustrated, or I used to get frustrated, if I would get a message at like Friday at 9 p.m. that this 6-year-old is practicing piano, which I'm like, why is a 6-year-old practicing piano at 9 p.m.? Anywho, that's a different thing. Nowadays, I don't get stressed about it, but it's just much easier to be proactive about these things and let them know ahead of time. Idea 7, student videos. So these are a little different. You were doing the tutorial videos, you were recording them during lesson time and then just pulling the clip. For this idea, have students record their own videos and then send them to you. There's a few different options here, but Before we get to those options, I know you're thinking, you just complained about getting a message on Friday night. I know. You aren't going to have most of your students do this. So you can either have it as a blanket, any student in your studio can do that. Just remind them that after a certain point in the day and on the weekends, or whenever your downtime is, you're not going to get back to them. But don't worry, once you're back in your office, once you're back at your piano, you will. What you can do is let a student know that by midweek, they need to send you a video. If you have online storage for them, they can upload it there. A lot of my students, they just prefer to text the video because it's just a small segment. I'm not asking for the whole song. And so because it's a small segment, they can text it to me. It's not a problem. It takes me a few seconds to review, and then I can either let them know, okay, you're ready for step 2, look at your practice page, or you're doing really well, but I need you to focus in on this a little bit more. Give it one more day of practice and then move on to stage 2. Student videos are great. They put the onus on the student to get the feedback from you. Yeah, it's actually kind of nice getting those little updates from students. Idea 8, challenges. Now we want to keep these friendly, but you can do these in a couple different ways. You could do studio-wide challenges, or you could do more personal challenges. On the studio-wide side of things, we always have a Ms. Rosemarie versus students practice challenge in the weeks before a recital. What happens is I have it set up that it imports the points that my students are already earning. Then I just mark off when I practice my recital song, and it tallies a leaderboard for me. You could go that route. It's really nice once you have it set up because it's almost no work. But if that's feeling a little overwhelming setting up a spreadsheet, you could do something where it's just each week you take a look and you tally on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be complicated. You could do studio-wide, and having the students versus you is kind of fun because there are students that are very competitive. They're going to want to beat you. And then there's other students that they're just not going to care, and that's fine. I don't make a big deal about it. Everybody's automatically entered into it, but because I only show the top students, like the top 3 or 4 students, it doesn't matter. So that way the students that this is just not their jam, it's not like they're getting called out. If you choose to go a personal route, then you could think of almost like an awards show type title for the challenges. So for something like, say, Farewell Old Friend, where you're going for a very specific emotion or set of emotions within the piece, if the student, they haven't quite gotten the emotion across, then maybe it could be, okay, your goal is that you want to win the song most likely to make me cry. Because Farewell Old Friend is about saying goodbye to someone that you love, this would be actually a really great title for it. You can make them funny, just have fun with it. Whatever fits the song that your student is playing and whatever you really want them to do, then you can go from there. Idea 9, backing tracks. So while all the other ideas that I'm telling you about can be done in that 2 weeks, you might be able to do a little bit closer to the recital, this is one that needs a longer lead time. On the one hand, it is fantastic for those students that stop and start, stop and start, stop and start, no matter what you do. It keeps them moving forward, and that's a really important thing because you don't want, when you're performing, you've kind of gotten into a loop in some sections. Sometimes it's not even about fixing mistakes. Students get into a loop that they keep going back, even though they don't need to fix anything. You can use a backing track. What I would recommend is, one, you're starting this one 3 to 4 weeks before the recital. You're also making sure that your student has already played with a backing track. It's another skill set, and so for some students, they find it fairly easy, and other students, they find it a challenge. This one's not going to be a studio-wide approach. Even if they've improvised to a backing track, that still counts. Definitely keep this one in mind, but I would say it's not necessarily my first option, hence why it's lower down on the list. Idea 10, fun activities. When students get bored, practice plateaus, and that's our best case scenario. At worst, it just completely ends, and this is not what we want going into a recital, right? We know that at the very least, you need to maintain your song. What you can do is give your students agency over how they practice. Something like 5 Ways Recital Prep activities gives students almost like a choose your own adventure approach. These are PDFs that I created for my students that have 5 options on the page. Students can choose whichever one they want, whatever's going to help them reach the goal that they have for the week or that they just are interested in that day. This works really well. I have actually used this also with a studio challenge where I gave my students extra points if they sent me videos or showed me during lesson how they'd used the different 5 ways. This was just an extra little challenge we had, and my students really enjoyed it. Plus, I got some really great social media stuff because of it. I was able to show some of those videos on my studio social media channels. The goal here is to keep it lighthearted and fun so it's enjoyable. We want to avoid it being a chore. And so, especially once you've been working on a song for a while, and usually recital songs, students work on them for longer than the regular repertoire. If we keep it fun, we can get them through those last stages before the big day. As promised, here are the resources that will help you take the tips from this video and help your students master their recital songs before the big day. 1. Get a recital song mastered with 10 last-minute ideas. This is the companion article. There I can go into a little bit more detail than I did here. I had to kind of fly through it a little bit. 2. Fun activities to prepare students for a piano recital. So this is a video on the channel. I did show it earlier, but it'll be in the description as well. 3. Hear the spring-themed playlist for the songs that were mentioned in this video. So A Life Lived, Jake Meets the Jackrabbit, Waltz Under the Stars, The Rabbit in the Garden, and Farewell Old Friend. If you're wanting to hear what those songs sound like, go ahead and check out that playlist. And 4, it's the 5 Ways Recital Prep activities. This one, again, we've used it on my studio. It was lots of fun, and my students actually really like using it each year. Which of these ideas will help your students master their recital songs with plenty of time to spare before the big day? Let me know in the comments. You're not going to want to miss out on the last video of this recital-themed series. If you've missed the previous videos, be sure to check the description because I've got links to all of them there. And also make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you're notified when next week's video comes out.